All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. One more time, just a quick reminder, we'll keep live questions and comments muted until the end of the presentation when we jump into the Q&A portion, but the presentation will run about 20 minutes, so I'll have plenty of time at the end. So while we're presenting, you can submit questions online using the Zoom room options. Perfect. So welcome, everybody, to Xylo's latest webinar, Building an Enterprise SaaS Playbook. My name is Tom McCorkle. I'm Xylo's Director of Customer Success. My job is to ensure that we're driving material outcomes with our customers and that we're listening to their needs across all aspects of SaaS management. I'm joined today by Nick Blanchette. Hey, Nick.
Hey, Tom. Thanks. Hey, folks. So my name is Nick Blanchette. I am Director of Product Marketing here at Xylo. And my role is to help make sure that all the customer feedback that Tom and his team hears makes its way into the product and then that value gets appropriately communicated out to the market. As we continue building with the goal of effectively managing SaaS. So let's jump into the slides.
Perfect. So today we're discussing building an enterprise SaaS playbook. It's no secret that managing an entire SaaS stack across an organization, including shadow IT, is a big challenge. It's a challenge that's not isolated to IT, since SaaS applications are purchased all over the business, at the BU level, the team level, and at the individual level. This makes it all the more important to create a playbook to be socialized throughout the business.
Yeah, and also managing SaaS at a small or mid-size business where deployment happens quickly is a different animal than managing SaaS at the enterprise level, where you're accounting for SaaS deployment across thousands of users rather than hundreds.
Yeah, so with just under 30 minutes today, we'll stick to these 3 high-level plays for developing an enterprise management strategy. But I would like to call out, if you want to learn more details, get in touch with us at xylo.com. We have tons of content out there. And again, throughout the webinar, please submit questions that will be answered in the Q&A at the end of the webinar.
Cool. Let's jump into play 1. So line up the big picture. This is where we're going to take a look at the view first of the overall market. So if you've joined previous Xylo webinars, thank you for joining those, by the way. Or if you've started looking at any research around SaaS management yourself, you've probably seen this stat from Gartner. And we cite it frequently because we believe it's very accurate bellwether for SaaS spending, which is heavily driven by enterprise purchases. And it sets the table for any conversation around preparing for the future of SaaS. So according to Gartner, SaaS spending will grow by about 18% in 2019 alone. And enterprise strategy is all the more important here, as the majority of SaaS spending is driven by large organizations. SaaS makes up about $85.1 billion, or about 40% of the total cloud market, making it the largest share. The first play thus involves these 3 pieces. So defining a starting strategy for how you're going to tackle this problem, capturing the current state of all the SaaS inventory throughout your business, and collaborating with other lines of business via a SaaS system of record. Now, this is not a linear process and will likely include the continual discovery of new applications while diving deeper into your most mission-critical applications that your business runs on. Make sure you set up a strategy for success by allowing for iteration. This is certainly more of an agile process than a waterfall approach. So let's jump into these 3 steps in more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. The first step of lining up the big picture is kicking off a process that makes an accurate view into your SaaS catalog. So naturally, we start with defining that high-level organizational strategy for SaaS management. This is going to be different for everyone, but here's a few examples that we've seen across our customer base. Some customers are really keen on identifying costs and sources of those costs in SaaS applications. Start on a journey of understanding what tools are out there in their org, both the known and the unknown. Others really want to understand risk, so data, privacy, security, measure that SaaS adoption usage. On the adoption front, really understanding, are they getting the investment out of what they have put money into? That really ties into the ROI and making sure that you're getting the most out of your investment. Regardless of your goals, we find as companies begin to mature in this journey, we find that there's a blend of all 4 of these, but typically one of these 4 is what's going to start off that journey. Step 2 is really designing that capture mechanism for the current state. Across our customer base, we find that over 50% of SaaS purchase transactions are outside of IT. That translates to customers underestimating their number of apps and the amount of spend on those tools by as much as 2 to 3 times. With hundreds more apps than expected, the average enterprise encounters 2 SaaS application renewals per day. This sounds like your org, you're not alone. Xylo recently hosted our first SaaS management network with some of our most tech-forward customers, the likes of which logos you see almost every day. Even they acknowledge that they're just starting here at the discovery. And these companies range from 15-year-old companies with 50,000 employees to hot new startups scaling at breakneck speed. Things to leave you with for you to go and get started. The first logical step for an organization is to use a spreadsheet to capture this information. Whether it starts in IT, procurement, or finance, it's a manual effort with quite a few flaws. From the sheet going stale as soon as you're done to heavy lift across cross-functional teams. We believe a SaaS management tool is better for a few reasons. This approach creates a single view of all SaaS discovery that's integrated into existing systems such as your AP, your expense, your SSO, and direct usage integrations into the most popular business apps. All while this is being continually updated with little to no effort to continuously find those tools. Step 3, collaborating on a single source of truth created by this discovery process. Once you define strategy and full discovery, talk to your stakeholder teams, be it security, governance, risk and compliance, department heads, et cetera. Ask them what are the biggest things that they need fixed right away. Ask them if this data is accurate. They have the context around the deployment of these shadow tools that you're just now learning about. What about application redundancies or duplicates that we can eliminate? How does our SaaS management strategy align to overall enterprise strategy? Bottom line is, establish a source of truth with a single view that can be customized to give value to all stakeholders. I know that this is a lot, but regardless of where you are in your strategy definition, discovery, and collaboration, there are material steps you can take to improve your big picture SaaS strategy.
Great. Well, let's look at play number 2. So all about getting your teams in the game. And through this, we'll talk about empowering responsible SaaS ownership where it makes sense, defining managed and unmanaged application thresholds for your business and what that means, and delivering upon best practices for SaaS team management. Now that you've defined your organization's point of view and created a catalog of the current state of your SaaS inventory, it's time to think about how you want to manage applications within your business moving forward. Ask yourselves some of these questions. So how do you want to get your team in the game and collaborate with the rest of the business? Can you control all of the apps that matter within just your team? Is it worth your time to manage all the apps that other business units are purchasing in addition to the managed apps that you run your business on? Just ensure that you're aligning your strategy that you set up in play 1 that Tom just went over. So let's talk a little bit about empowering responsible SaaS ownership. So we mentioned this earlier, but more than half of all IT spending is occurring without IT's involvement. And guess what? You're not getting that ownership back. For many, it's time to embrace and overcome shadow IT by, for one, discovering all the SaaS applications within your organization, and 2, establishing the governance framework that allows for control and flexibility. Now, one good example I like to think of is the infamous marketing technology landscape graphic that I'm sure a lot of folks have seen. So it's an annual accounting of every marketing technology application available. And it's grown from about 150 applications in 2011 to more than 7,000 in 2018. So 2 takeaways here. SaaS is continually growing and any knowledge of the known universe is quickly outdated. So rely on your specialists within the organization. And, for example, your CMO or your marketing leader will likely have a more effective understanding of this marketing tech landscape and how that can be used for their business unit. So the role of the IT leader then becomes to enable teams to use the software that makes them and their departments more effective. Our co-founder, Corey, likes to say, it's the progressive CIO that lets people buy whatever software they want, but monitors the inventory and provides the framework for best practices. So you'll want to empower various business leaders, but first you'll need to define what managed and unmanaged applications mean for your business.
Yeah, so when we talk about embracing shadow IT, many customers take this approach of managed versus unmanaged applications. Most enterprise customers we work with find their own right balance. And in some of the SMB space, this is less of an issue because it is a stack that's capable of being fully managed by a centralized team. It's really up to you to determine where you fall on here. But typically, as we find high growing and larger customers, this is a concept that resonates really, really well. So you probably already have a pool of apps that are centrally managed, and I guarantee there are tools purchased across the business with varying degrees of management and expectations that you're handling. Since every company is different, this isn't designed to be a prescriptive framework. Rather, I want to talk about a sliding scale that we see customers often weigh. When we talk with enterprise organizations about how they organize managed versus unmanaged SaaS, there are a few key themes. Is this SaaS mission critical to the enterprise? Is it running core pieces of our product or our customer journey? If yes, it typically ends up being managed. Is this application deployed horizontally? I.e., are there multiple cost centers purchasing this tool, or are there multiple cost centers or teams using this tool? Does it carry a high cost to the business where these licenses really are pricey to be running on a per user basis? If yes, we tend to see these tools fall into a managed category as well. There's a few other thresholds out there, such as what are the single sign-on or the multi-factor needs? What's the criticality of the data? Does your help desk team have to support or enable users? What's the value it's driving for the business, et cetera? So with this power, or in this case, ownership, comes great responsibility. So a critical part of this unmanaged ownership for SaaS applications throughout the business is ensuring that teams are following some best practices. Visit us at Xylo's website to see more. We have tons of content out there, but here are a few examples where customers have answered questions or have employed these best practices across their org. So how will shadow IT or otherwise IT-approved spend, usage, and risk posture be measured? This plays into that continual discovery. You have to know what's out there to know what you even need to measure. Have these vendors, tools, or use cases been vetted through the appropriate channels, be them legal, be they security or finance? An app onboarding and offboarding strategy is critical there. On the risk mitigation front, how are the application owners adhering to organizational policies for risk and compliance for data security and privacy? How will teams ensure that what gets purchased actually gets used and the value is derived? Provide your teams with visibility into that utilization and licensing. A big one is really around renewals. So ensuring that you don't get hit with an auto renewal. I talk to a lot of customers who say, can I please get an alert for this app? Because we actually didn't even mean to renew it. We just happened to miss it. So beyond just covering that base, making sure that renewal management is something that you're driving and consulting with your stakeholders is a big element. Ultimately, doing these things will empower responsible SaaS ownership. Defining your managed versus unmanaged can help you understand what part of the world you can control and what part of the ownership you need to share with the business or security. Defining best practices for SaaS management for those folks who you're sharing that ownership and responsibility with will help make not only your SaaS management strategy successful, but make them successful in themselves.
Awesome. All right, right into play 3. So measure and plan for the future. So now that you've got the broad strokes of the first place going, you can talk about measuring what matters for your organization, building ongoing reports, and setting the benchmarks that can drive business decision-making. So maybe, Tom, would it be possible if you could share some highlights or some types of metrics that our customers are looking to start to benchmark against?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's an underlying theme to all of this. There's a reason why it's the last step. Really, it is the system of record and the collaboration that happens that allows us to drill into some of these metrics. Some of those popular are to compare your SaaS spend year over year against other growth metrics. This could be your year over year spend against employee count, revenue, et cetera. Ultimately, to forecast the measure you need for new processes that drive more efficiency and value from your SaaS investment. Utilization is a great one. Creating a measurement of the SaaS investments that allows you to identify value opportunities. This goes back to the not paying for what you're not using. We talk a lot at Xylo about that full visibility, and this utilization is a really great add-on to the spend element to understand how our tools actually being used and who's using them. Adoption. This is more about first time and ongoing use, but it allows you to create more effective deployments for new software. Having a goal, having a plan, understanding how this is supposed to be used and adopted inside of the business, and actually having the data to bump that up against. Finally, I think of employee and customer experiences as kind of similar measures. So whether it's the ability to pull your internal users' satisfaction on select applications and to really layer that in with their adoption and use, or identifying full stack visibility that can also surface fragmented tools or processes. If you have 3 or 4 tools doing the same function inside of an organization, this tool is deployed on the customer side, this tool is deployed on the partner side, and that tool is deployed internally, you can create silos and fragmented experience for both employees and your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And many of these benchmarks play well into defining a prototypical SaaS lifecycle for your organization. So with a prototype or a templated SaaS lifecycle in place, you can begin setting the standards for when and what SaaS applications are entering your organization. So when covers events like when a new SaaS application enters the organization or is requested, what does the review process look like and what review process is received? So determining needs for things like risk compliance. So asking questions like, does this ask contain sensitive data? Or does this app contain sensitive data? Identity. So does this app need to be behind SSO or how do you prioritize your identity roadmap? And utilization. So how do you want to measure success when it comes to adoption? When utilization or adoption is measured and is shown to be low, what action should be taken? And when applications are approaching a vendor notification period or an auto renewal date, what review process is kicked off?
Yeah, so on paper, it's easy to say, sure, we do this, but what do those hands-on activities actually look like? The way we see our customers execute on these are status check-ins using that continual discovery to surface apps that are entering or exiting the organization, really driving conversations and collaboration with the business. Vendor approval boards or groups focused on requesting new applications. Compare those against your existing stack and understand if there's already something that solves a need. Renewal management that can give you visibility into what's upcoming and the time that you need to execute on that renewal and make an informed decision. Licensing workflows to not only measure what you are or aren't using, but re-provision or re-harvest unused licenses so someone in the business can get the value from that tool. And then SaaS roadshows for the business to show where that visibility into their stack and their spend. Often seeing those dollars and cents right next to each other can create a different picture for the business. So really quickly, I want to make sure that we're leaving time for Q&A. I kind of want to talk about this as a journey. One of our oldest customers was actually the first customer that I managed when I joined Xylo. It's been really fascinating to watch how they've gone from no visibility into the org. So they really needed to start with discovery. In this case, it was primarily procurement looking for this information. There was a lot of talk of, we feel like there's apps everywhere and there's proliferation everywhere. So we went through, we performed discovery with them, and they were right in line with that, underestimating applications by 2 to 3 times. So it started with this, and the first thing that they had to do was get their arms around that and start to identify, what does that system of record look like? They really went through 2 phases of it. First was identifying, we know what all these tools are, who out there is buying them, who out there owns them, and what business units are these ultimately tied to so we can drive those strategic conversations. The next piece is looking at that functionality and understanding where there is stack rationalization that could go on. So by having this full inventory, they can start having strategic conversations around, are there opportunities for us to consolidate? Should we be growing with this other vendor because it looks like they actually provide this functionality that we need and we aren't using today? Is there an opportunity to add that onto our subscription? The next layer of building that system of record came from the collaboration. So as an output of those conversations, they actually created unique views for each of the different lines of business. So a line of business leader can know and understand what it is that they're buying and using. The next step there was creating a single place to track things like security reviews, legal reviews, our DPAs in place, et cetera. So it just continues to pile and build on. And then finally, as we've layered in utilization on top of all of this information, they're going into renewals, understanding the strategy that they're going to go for. Do they have an over deployment of licenses and they're going to be met with the true up? Do they have the opposite scenario where they have a number of licenses that they could actually reharvest and contain those costs by not needing to grow with the vendor? So I hope you can see that this all really begins with that discovery and having the full picture, and then that collaboration. And now they're able to benchmark year over year and measure their results and understand what impact they're having on the overall SaaS experience.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. That's a great example of the journey that it takes to truly tackle SaaS management. And no matter where you are in your SaaS management journey, most organizations are tackling this challenge for the very first time. So make sure you're thinking about the future for how you'll take action when your SaaS system of record is set up and the ways in which you'll measure success. But first, start with the basics. So to wrap things up, I really want to thank everyone for joining us today, and really appreciate the time to join us on the webinar. Today we covered how to line up the big picture for your organization, so to create a starting strategy for discovering shadow IT and collaborating on enterprise SaaS applications. Next, we covered how to get your lines of business or teams in the game within a flexible ownership framework, including some options for unmanaged versus managed applications, and creating some best practices around that. Finally, we wrapped up with defining benchmarks in your organization's unique SaaS lifecycle. So now we'll turn it over to Q&A, but if you're interested in continuing the conversation, learning more about SaaS management, or getting a demo of Xylo, reach out to us and find us through email at info@xylo.com or on Twitter with our handle @getxylo.
Perfect. So it looks like we do have a few questions coming in. Before we jump into those, one last housekeeping item. We'll have a really quick poll at the end. It's only a handful of multiple choice questions. We'd really appreciate your feedback on those. Perfect. So just one moment while I get some of these questions pulled up. Our first question is, how much work is it to set this all up? How long does it take to begin tracking all of these elements? And once underway, what does it take to maintain? It's a great question, and I think it depends a little bit on where you are today and what kinds of resources you have available. To build a strategy, that just requires having the right people in the room. We actually start with this and drive these conversations with a lot of our customers and understand what is that crawl, walk, run. That crawl always starts with discovery, so understanding what efforts it is to go in and understand that discovery. For Xylo customers specifically, it's really easy to get set up. We have integrations that you can plug in where we will actually ingest the data that we need to run all that discovery, or we can receive those files offline. That goes through our matching model. Our services team runs through it really quickly, and you're up and running with a full 100% coverage discovery in a matter of weeks or a month. Then it's really a matter of prioritizing. So taking that information that you found and determining what's next. Is the next group to get involved identity so you can run your identity and access management strategy? Is it getting security involved, et cetera? Perfect. So looks like we have one other question. What does the discovery process look like? Is it programmatic, or do you need to pull your whole company, or do you go through the payment system? You want me to grab that one, Nick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, perfect. So I'll jump in again on this one. It starts with financial data. So we ingest all of a company's vendor payments that are going out through accounts payable and all of your expenses. Those vendor payments are going to find obviously all of the elements that are known to the organization. We're also going to find those big ticket items that aren't on IT or procurement's radar that marketing or CS or whoever is purchasing. And then that real shadow IT comes from the expenses. So we find customers are classifying SaaS products as dues and subscriptions, books and subscriptions. We look at everything, and that's how we find that. Finally, it is programmatic, so it's an ongoing process. We'll do a one-time 12-month look, and then we're constantly looking and refreshing that information. I think we have time for one more question at least. Looks like the question is, isn't all this already covered under asset management or software asset management? Nick, why don't you grab that one?
Sure. So actually, I was just down at a conference with a bunch of IT asset management leaders, and the hot topic of the conversation was SaaS and cloud and how to get a handle on this in the future. So everyone is starting to realize that they need to get a hold of SaaS throughout their business. And the realization comes from the fact that this problem is certainly different than the traditional software asset management challenge. challenge. So therefore, I think everyone's realizing that you need a different solution to manage the SaaS problem because it's inherently a different type of issue. So for more information, we've got a bunch of resources on our website on SAM versus SaaS, and check out Zyla.com to learn more on that specific topic. But yeah, I think that's what we have for today. Thanks everyone for joining, and really appreciate the time.